So, ever wondered what it'd be like to be on TRT after a 1 year duration, up to 25 years, like Mike here? Find out next.
So, welcome back, Sam, to another episode of Balance My Hormones.
Yep.
I'm Mike, and Sam's here with us today, and we're going to have a chat, as we did before lockdown, about what to expect on TRT series. So this is a what to expect series, and now we're up to 1 year, up to 25 years, whereas kind of where I'm at the actually 24-year mark.
Yeah.
So, Sam, what are your thoughts? You've been on it longer than a year.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the expectations of TRT, even more so recently with social media, I think we said in some of the other videos that a lot of people they hear reports of people posting things on social media groups, on forums, and YouTube videos of like TRT has cured my anxiety and I'm shagging all the time, my sex drive is through the roof, and I'm confident and I'm succeeding in life and nothing's bothering me. And I think the main thing, again, just to recap on that, is that it's very subjective. Those things, somebody could have anxiety in one situation in their life, and most of the time their levels of anxiety are very minimal, manageable, but that one situation is really bothering them, and then they go on TRT, and maybe that makes them feel better because the hormone deficiency was adding to the anxiety. They expose themselves to that situation, and then they feel better, and they're over the moon by it. They go onto social media and they say something like, oh, has anyone else cured their anxiety from TRT? Has TRT cured people's anxiety? I'm not anxious anymore. And then you've got maybe another chap who has been crippled by anxiety in most situations, in their life potentially, and sees that and goes, well, TRT must remove all of my anxiety then. And then maybe starts TRT, might see some improvements, but then thinks TRT isn't working because, my anxiety's not gone. And those people say their anxiety, went away. So it is very subjective. You have to have the right sort of expectations for TRT. But, and the thing about TRT is, it is often life-changing. If you've got a hormonal deficiency, causing symptoms like low sex drive, fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, low mood, and you correct that hormonal imbalance, it's life-changing, but the things like fatigue, low mood, anxiety, sexual dysfunction, there are lots of other causes that can be attributed to those things. So if you're getting to a year, there's two sides to it. You have to be on TRT long enough, working with a doctor, getting to levels that work for you, and finding what protocol works for you. And then that has to go alongside doing the right things, if you can, as soon as you can. And what I mean by that is working on your diet, training, sleep. And TRT, if you've had a hormonal deficiency and you start TRT, a testosterone deficiency, it enables those things to happen a lot easier if you are doing them, but it's not going to make you do them. And that's something to be aware of. So you have to start to do some of these practices and look for help and look for advice on how to do so. And that can go from mental health as well. Maybe there's things you have to deal with, and maybe see a psychologist or something like that, or do some CBT, talking therapy. And then if you start to do those things, that's when you start to see the compounding benefits of having optimal hormones. So this goes from, if you're eating terribly and sleeping terribly, and it may be not exposing to certain situations or trying new things, and you're on TRT, you may not get the outcomes that you maybe were expecting. And so I think as long as you are doing those practices alongside TRT as much as you can, that's when you see the true benefits. So whether you're, a year in, or I'll let Mike take a lead on this one in a minute, if you're 24, 25 years in, I think you have to be aware that there are other factors in play in your life that can cause some of the symptoms that you were also caused by low testosterone and may need addressing on top of TRT. So, I mean, Mike, I know with me during my journey, there have been things that I initially thought TRT was going to cure. Man, I was influenced by, certain things on social media, as we have so much access to it now. And I had to work on them. And, that was getting my diet sorted. That was, doing mindfulness work, addressing some things that, with anxiety and stuff like that were triggers. Training correctly and not overtraining. I was overtraining for years, trying to get results that I wasn't getting. And I had to address them. But how has it been for you over those years? Have you sort of come across, I suppose it must just be like the back of your mind now, your TRT, in terms of how it affects your life? And
yeah, it's now just part of the routine, as it probably had been after the first year, to be fair. And I think things came in different periods. Like the first period was getting on TRT, getting adjusted to it. My first protocol being creams, but regardless of which protocol you're on, it was the continuation of getting improvements in some of those symptoms. And some of the first things that were improved being libido and erections. But I was also in my 20s, and then as I got a bit older, the next phase, based on different doctors, different protocol, was injection treatment, which was fine too. But there were periods in my life when my diet and exercise wasn't optimal, and I had put on a bit more body fat, call that my fat phase, stressed at work, and my face all bloaty, and that was a problem.
I've seen the pictures.
I've seen the pictures. I want to show those pictures, but there were other things, and over the years, I did discover there were other problems with other hormonal systems, that being thyroid. So, I mean, hopefully my eyebrows are a bit better, but, that was in my early 30s, probably about 10 years into TRT, I noticed that, well, I didn't notice then, but looking back, I can see that there was symptoms that were related more to hypothyroidism, which I just didn't recognize. I thought testosterone was going to fix all the problems. And it did for the most part. I mean, the underlying energy, the drive, both sex drive and otherwise, they were there. But I think it was the puffiness, the bloaty face was more than just which ester I was on. It was most likely due to the hypothyroid disease, which finally got caught and sorted a few years ago. So that's one of the other things to consider. I mean, there's some other things I noticed for me. There would be this fluctuation in prolactin, which we also see for some of our clients. At the time, the endocrinologist, his answer was, here's some anastrozole. This is way, way, way back when. And there is some linkage between high estradiol and the knock-on effect of prolactin. That's what this endocrinologist had said, which is strange that they were even doing that in the 90s. But eventually coming off the anastrozole was also part of a beneficial, for me anyway, in the later years, coming off that had helped. So I think there's adjustments and the different periods, like I said, in my treatment. And as you learn and as the science has changed, I was fortunate enough to be able to make the changes to my protocol with the doctors and start feeling better. But it was recognizing there were other conditions. It wasn't just, hey, I'm on TRT. Yes, overall things were great. But it, like you said, it also took diet, proper exercise, proper managing of stress, and looking at other comorbidities, like the hypothyroid disease, getting that sorted before things started to really click. But I could definitely say it's probably one of the best things I ever did coming on TRT. And had I not done it, well, we probably wouldn't have this conversation today, for one.
Yeah.
And for two, I don't think my life would have been where it is now. It's enhanced my overall quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound all doom and gloom when I'm saying those things like TRT or even thyroid issues. If you have a deficiency in those things and it is corrected and a doctor treats them, it can be life-changing. The way that you feel. I mean, we talked to Nelson Virgil recently. He's been on therapy near 30 years, is it, Mike? Pushing that sort of time or similar time to you. And he's been coaching and helping guys through TRT for nearly 3 decades, and he was saying that it does improve self-confidence, it does improve, it improves resilience to stress, it gives a certain get up and go to just get a job done. If you've got something to do, you're just going to go and do it. So it does have that effect, and it is positive. So some of the things you do read on social media you know, with it sounds like a really unhelpful video. Like, you can believe some of them, but like, you know, don't. But really, it's having the, you know, the awareness that it can be life changing, but with the caveat that you need to have those other things involved. So, I mean, the way that I sort of explain it to people sometimes is you've got hormones here, and then you've got, you know, other health conditions here, and you have to be aware of them and make sure those boxes are ticked. Then you've got diet, you've got sleep, you've got, you know, mental health and well-being, stress, you know, resistance tolerance, all those sorts of things, and you know, exercise. All those things have to be worked on separately, whilst everything else is ticked, and one can affect the other. And then outside of that, you just have the normal ebbs and flows of life. Yeah. You know, number of guys I've chatted to that in lockdown, they're like, I don't really have much of a libido. Like, I'm really stressed. I'm noticing I'm drinking more. I'm just drinking once a week now, and I was drinking like once, you know, every 3 or 4 months, and suddenly their mood is lower and things like that. And obviously they you know, they will look for something they can change and control, usually, which is like the TRT. And these guys could be on therapy like years, you know, nothing's changed. They've been dialed in, everything's great. And they're like, I wonder whether suddenly something has happened. But really, there are the other things to be aware of too. But then it all synergistically, you know, you see that generic improvement, right?
That's the complexity of the sex drive, because you need a certain stimulus, something to stimulate your brain in order for you to have the drive. Now, obviously, there's a whole cocktail of hormones and other neuroendocrine signals that, you know, that take place. And so it's, if you don't have that, if you don't have the drive or the hunt, or you're just kind of locked down, of course it's not going to be ideal. And likewise, if, you know, I noticed through the years, there would be these periods where everything is amazing, sex drive is, you know, everything's just clicks, and then all of a sudden, for a few days, I'm like, well, what happened to that? And then a few days later, I come down with a cold or something, I'm not feeling well. And obviously it's your body kind of pre-warning you that something's on its way. And then, you know, then when you get over that, then you start feeling better.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. That's often guys have noticed a correlation when they're a little bit under the weather and sex drive just being low, which makes sense. I mean, look, I suppose if you go back to sort of in the wild, if we were fighting off a disease, like the main drive of the body is not to, like, you know, procreate. I think there's got to be something there that, you know, it's the same when you're under stress. You know, if you had a stressor from, I don't know, an environmental factor, you're not like, well, this is the time to make babies. You know, let's go and do that. So I think there's something to that. But
I think so too. So it's just a matter of putting in perspective. And I didn't have the added stress of all the Facebook groups and online forums and to kind of feed into how I was feeling. I just, you know, used my testosterone treatment and I got on with it. And I felt how I felt. So I'd run it by the doctor and ask him, you know, what his thoughts were. Why am I feeling this way? Sometimes he'd have an answer. Sometimes there was no answer. It was so
It's amazing how many people can feel fantastic until they read something on the internet that creates anxiety and doubt potentially. You know, and I think I said on some of the other videos is that the guys who do best on TRT, I've noticed, as in smoothly, as in get to being dialed in that really good place, are the really old guys like Mike. They're like, no, joking. are the guys that don't use the internet. So Mike has almost lived through that space, right? When you're on TRT and it wasn't the abundant source of like easy, accessible information and opinions to the wide world. So I don't know, and you know, having talked to you about it, you know, so you've essentially been through a fat phase on TRT where you weren't doing the diet right.
Well, I was doing up properties, eating lots of McDonald's and fast food because, you know, there wasn't enough time, working a full-time job. You know, when you have a time crunch, you don't always go to the gym regularly. I was also in my fat and happy phase when I was going out to nice steak dinners, part of my job, and lots of alcohol, and you polish off a couple of bottles of wine with clients, and, you know, it has negative effects, you know, especially if you're on testosterone, not on testosterone, you see. So that added to it. You know, I would say probably around 2009, I really started focusing on what I was eating, watched what I was drinking, watched the alcohol content, and I got a lot leaner, and the testosterone was there always as a baseline. And that's the thing. You don't just use testosterone and say, oh, I'm not going to the gym now, so I won't take my testosterone. It's your baseline. It's kind of, it keeps you going. Yeah. And it's the other things that will enhance its effect. I think there's a paper about it, the benefit of testosterone and exercise. Those who do both do get the best results as far as the mood and the improvement in their symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's plenty of, like, I think a really good bit of knowledge I heard a doctor say in a lecture was that there's plenty of younger guys with great testosterone, cruising around, that are unhealthy, are overweight, and unhappy because of other factors. So just because you get TRT back in you is not a guaranteed, going to overpower all those other things. But it can definitely help if you have low testosterone, start to overcome those things. So, yeah, I think that. Sorry, mate, go on.
There's one other thing I want to talk about, that, if you have these bad habits and lifestyle, and you have potential for atherosclerosis or issues with your endothelium in your blood vessels, some guys will be shocked that they're getting erectile dysfunction, either, being beyond TRT. I thought that should help it, and it can, but erectile dysfunction is a vascular disease, so that's going to be fixed and addressed as well. Which, over time, testosterone can help, but if you're on testosterone and you're not maintaining a healthy lifestyle, it can possibly get worse until those things are corrected or addressed.
And ED, erectile dysfunction, can be psychological as well, right? But again, the same thing applies, right? If you're not dealing with those triggers and traumas, and because it can be traumatic if that's happened, you may need to see a sexual therapist or a psychologist or something to work on those things. It's just another thing that then can lead into that same factor, and then someone's protocol often gets the blame, right?
But for the whole time I've been on TRT, I never went off treatment. My approach was always maintain that healthy base of testosterone, and things would work out. I think that the issue I had a few times was when, and I can see why, it was when the doctors put me on the AIs. For me, back then, they were putting you on very, very high doses, and that is problematic, a really high dose of those AIs, and I think it negatively affected me in many ways. And it was like, sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low, sometimes I have erectile dysfunction because it wasn't sensitive enough down there. So it really was like Dr. Kryger, a friend of mine, when he talked about being in balance, that it did make all the difference. And so I think that's something just caution people about, is you don't want to overdo it, and don't obsess about, oh, where's my level today? I'm not feeling great. My level must be too high or too low. And I don't think it works like that.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, we talked about in the other video, that there's a lot of anxiety creation, I think, strategically by a lot of people about, doctors, coaches, things like that, where they talk about protocols. And if they create an anxiety, like your protocol may not be correct and may be causing your anxiety or your ED or your low sex drive, everyone must be doing it like this on a, every other day or every day or twice weekly, or, or if there's one dogmatic way that someone is saying that a protocol must be done to try and solve all of your issues, it's generally a way of trying to attract your, clients, patients to them so that they can work with them. Because really, as we spoke to Nelson about, and Mike, you've been on therapy 25 years. Generally, once you get good levels of testosterone and good levels of estrogen and things in you, and things are working, those sort of things generally don't make a massive difference. I mean, you might go through that journey early on and find what works for you, but then trying to tweak it. And I was, I fell for this basically when I wasn't feeling good or had low energy. And reading things like, oh, well, it must be that you need to be on an every other day protocol, and that'll work for everybody, and there's things like peaks and troughs and stuff like that, and that's getting attributed to why you don't feel good. It's really attractive to try and then go and try them and create doubt elsewhere, but.
Or talk about stable levels when really, the longer you're on TRT, you do create a steady state. I mean, the exception being a once every 2 or 3 week protocol.
Yeah.
But, if you're doing a weekly dosing or twice weekly dosing, that's usually fine for most people. And I've tried all the different combinations of treatment. And, there is a danger, though, when you're using more medium to long acting esters. And if you don't get the main dose right, and you're doing a more frequent dosing, every other day or every 2 or 3 days, you can still be very high in the trough. So, I mean, that's the whole topic for another conversation. But I mean, I think just finding what works for you, based on either SHBG or what your goals are, is important. And it doesn't have to be so completely flat. I think the whole point is, as long as your levels don't drop back into the hypogonadal state in a short period of time from when it was in a super physiological state, because any type of treatment will get you slightly into that super physiological range. As long as you don't have that big contrast between the two, you're probably not going to notice. You'll be in a particular sweet spot regardless. You're not going to notice one day I'm good, one day I'm bad. It's not the levels. And we've seen on guys on, whether it's sustanon or testosterone cypionate, on day 3, 4, 5, exactly where the levels are going to be. And they're not just, they're well within the range. So I didn't see where they would just all of a sudden go up one day and down the next and up the next day.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's probably a topic for another video, isn't it, to go through all of that. That'd be a good idea. I think the main point here is if your longer term TRT, and let's just say it is over a year now, because generally it can take a year, sometimes 2 to 2 years in some rare cases for guys to feel the benefit of just continued better levels of testosterone and estrogen, etc. Yeah. That can happen, but if you are years down the line and you are starting to feel a certain way or something else is going on, and what I mean by that is a certain symptom is happening, obviously check in on your blood levels, your protocol. That's one box that can be ticked, but it's not the thing that's going to control everything. Generally, there's something else going on. And even Nelson Version on his forum, it's been around for a long time. That's why there's a whole part to it, that there's a lot of resources that says, when testosterone is not enough, and it addresses mood and fatigue and those sorts of things, because often some guys can come down this road, see an improvement, and then be like, well, what about this? And they've put all their chips on testosterone. This is going to cure it. This is going to get rid of everything. And then you need to look at those things. Do you think that's a fair summary? I mean, you've been through 25 years of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think the best thing to do is, if you're consistent with it, you stay the course, you keep a watch out for other things that might be going on in your body, because there may be other conditions that you have that you don't know about until later in life, and you can't just blame that testosterone's not working. And if you keep that as the foundation of your treatment, eventually you don't feel like you're the sick patient. You don't feel like you're being treated. It just feels like a part of what you do. And then anything else that pops up, that's the thing that you would then address.
Yeah, and you will because of now that optimized testosterone. Generally, I think it's fair to say you will be able to attack that and try and deal with it and address it in the most effective way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that was good.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so essentially that was a little summary of what to expect on TRT from 1 year to 25 years. It wasn't all doom and gloom. It's just, I think a really important thing to focus on is that it's a holistic view on your health and symptoms, and TRT is a very key part of that. There's always other things to consider.
Yeah, well said, Sam. That was great.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Okay, great. So if you want to, any more sort of content like this, press the subscription button, ring the notification bell.
Yeah, that's the end of our series for what to expect at certain time points. I suppose the next series is 25 to 50 years, but you'll have to wait for that one and keep subscribing and watching.
Yeah, be old and grey on there.
Well, I don't know. The testosterone may have an anti-aging effect. Maybe that's another topic.
Yeah, or I'll be white anyway. I'm ginger, so no worries. All right, great. All right, great. So catch us next time, and we'll do a few more videos for you. So thanks for watching. Cheers, Mike.
Thanks for watching. Cheers, Sam.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.